This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini, and we welcome back Linda McDonald. She has published 3 books with Page, including I Cry at Night, about her daughter's prescription drug addiction and death. And now she writes Farewell Planning with Love, Protecting Those We Leave Behind. And you probably have more experience than most people on this. Am I right, Linda?
Yes, I do. I've got 30 years working in the field of long-term care, as well as being in the funeral business off and on for about 40 plus personal experience. So I would say that I'm very qualified. And I also have a lecture program on grief counseling, which ties back into the book. The book is designed to educate the public on the importance of planning ahead for when you die. It gives you all the tools that you need to be able to make decisions. That's the first half of the book. The second half of the book is actually a workbook. So you can go in and you fill in the blanks of however you want your wishes to be, then have it notarized, and it becomes a legal document. I feel like I do an awful lot of good for people that feel like they have no place to go.
What's the biggest mistake we make?
By not filling out the blanks. People don't plan. The common answer is, well, you know what? I'm going to be dead. My family can make whatever decisions they want. But what people don't realize is that at the time of death, the families are absolutely devastated in many cases. They're not in a place where they can or want to make those decisions. And oftentimes there's a guilt. Did I do the right thing? And by filling all of this out, you've made decisions your whole life, put your life on a path. Why would you give up the most important decision of your life to let somebody else do it and maybe make a mistake? You do care. People say they don't care, but they do. And when they come into these lectures, what it does, it educates them not only on the importance, but how easy it is to sit down and fill it out. There are stories that are shared of what has happened to others. Many times families are absolutely split because of grandma's clock. There may be a suit that dad wore and one of the kids want it and the other kid wants it, and the family split. I mean, the dumbest things in the world cause such problems. So if you've planned ahead, you've just eliminated a lot of that stress.
So, my brother-in-law, he's in his 50s, and he got COVID, and he died.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And his wife, they hadn't been married that long, just like a couple of years. She didn't know how he wanted to be buried. We were like, does he want a casket? Does he want to be cremated? Does he want a priest? Never, ever talked about it.
All of that is in the book. Everything you just mentioned is what is common when people die. And there's a short story that I share in the class about this husband and wife. He was an attorney, and he was very set on how he wanted to die, and he was diagnosed with cancer. So he went to his attorney friend and filled out all the papers. He went to a funeral home, planned his funeral, went to the cemetery, got everything done, and then he dropped dead of a heart attack. His wife didn't know that. So she went to a different funeral home. She went to a different cemetery, and she paid $25,000. He paid close to $25,000. The next day, the attorney friend is reading the obituary and he sees where his friend died. So he calls the wife. Now you've got an issue because funeral homes and cemeteries historically don't give you back your money. Now, had he shared that with her, that would never have happened.
That's horrifying. They don't give you back your money in a circumstance like that. That's inexcusable.
Well, it depends on the funeral home. It depends on the cemetery, because if it's private, when you're private, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And there are good ones out there that, that would take that into consideration, but there are those out there who would not. So you just don't know. But that's a prime story of not planning ahead and letting people know.
All right, Linda, great information. And you can find out more about Linda and her books and her lectures at lindamcdonaldauthor.com. Ron Cubitt works for the federal government helping disadvantaged kids in Colorado, and his journey forms the basis of his book, Fool's Hill: The Meaning Why.
So my line of work is helping disadvantaged youth. I was a disadvantaged young person as I was growing up. So it was my opportunity to give back. So the book starts with a quote from Mark Twain. The two most important days of your life is the day you were born and the day you find out why. Hence the title of my book, Fool's Hill: The Meaning Why.
When did you find out your meaning why?
Well, I'm kind of still finding out why, but my goal, if you read my book, was to go out somewhere and make $1 million. But once I found my meaning why in about 2000, that's when I started really focusing on my why is helping disadvantaged youth.
I mean, it looks like the path was just paved for you.
Yes, I agree. And it's, you just sometimes you just never know, what that meaning why is, because I had a vision of my meaning why. I am so fortunate that I endured those challenges in order to find my meaning why. Because if I hadn't endured those challenges as I describe in the book, my meaning why probably wouldn't have revealed itself like it has now.
You joined the Marine Corps. You didn't graduate from high school, but then you earned your diploma. Then you got discharged from the military. You had employment challenges, money making ventures. It's like you took this circuitous route, and then 2 associate's degree, a Bachelor of Science, a master's degree, a doctorate in education from Pepperdine University. How were you able to do that?
So I was on a cruise and an individual asked me, said, "Do you feel accomplished writing your book?" I said, "Yeah, I feel accomplished, but I think it was more a miracle. It was divine intervention." I will say that if you ask me how did I go about doing it, sometimes I look back and I question it myself. But when you have that divine intervention, you know your why, and you have the burning desire, I would say, to achieve that goal, then yes, you'll be able to fulfill that goal. And also speak about when every time I go out on a venture, I just got back from 5 days and 6 nights in the Arizona wilderness, Superstition Wilderness, Tonto National Forest, not even a month ago. Every time I come back, it helps me reestablish my why. I'm just a different person when I come back. So the backpacking out there in the wilderness, and it's really a great experience, but the challenges and things you find along the way heightens that experience.
So, is your book to say, hey, if I did it, you can too, kind of thing?
Exactly. And it's about personal transformation. And I write in the book about, I give the starfish syndrome about an individual walking along the beach. This person was throwing all these starfish back, and the individual with them said something to the effect that you can't really make a difference by throwing all these starfish back. And the person picked up a starfish and threw it in the ocean and said, I made a difference for that one. If one person reads it and it changes their life, I made a difference. And who knows how that's going to affect the individual's life or lives for eons to come.
That's so true, Ron. Thank you. Retired after being a city manager for 47 years in Illinois, Stephen Burley finally found the time to finish the first of 2 books about his father, who immigrated to the U.S. from Russia at a very dangerous time in history. It is entitled Nikita.
I wrote this book. It took me 25 years to complete it because I used to come home from council meetings and my wife wouldn't let me go to bed with her because I would be always antsy in the bed, moving around. And she said, get out of the bed because I can't sleep. So I would go to the computer and start writing my book. What I wanted to do is write this book about my father as a way to remember him and the heritage for our family. And also, I wanted to honor my father as, one of the millions of immigrants that helped build our wonderful community. He was 17 years old when he ran away from his home in Russia in 1913, just before the First World War and the Russian Revolution. And he ran away from home because he had an affair with his brother's girlfriend. So my book has a lot of history, but there's a lot of embellishment on it to make it more adventurous and, enjoyable reading. I'm in the process of writing the second book about him. The first book deals with him living in the small rural community in Russia, southwest part of Russia. The little village that he lived in was called Yagets, and it was 250, 300 miles southwest of Minsk. And he goes to his grandfather in Minsk because his grandfather was very wise and was very close to him. On his way to Minsk, he hops a train, goes into the boxcar, and he meets a young university student who was a Bolshevik who had recently escaped from a Russian gulag and is hunted by a ruthless Cossack captain. And it's a story about what happens. The young university student who is indicating that he wants to change what's happening in Russia. Tsarist Nicholas Romanov II is the Russian Tsar, and he treats people as slaves, and he's a master to the people, and the people unfortunately are hungry. They pay taxes and live in poverty, and so it's a time of turmoil. And a new leader by the name of Lenin comes up, and he's trying to change the country. And it's during this turmoil that all this takes place. The Russian Cossack eventually finds my father at 17 is with the young university student, and they're speaking against the Tsar in St. Petersburg. And my father saves the life of the young student because the Cossack captain who's hunting him is about to shoot him, but my father shoots the captain. The Cossacks are looking for my father, and it turns out that my father decides to leave St. Petersburg and goes to America. So what he does is he's on a ship leaving Russia, go to America to a new life.
Wow, nice. Really nice. You must be great at book signings.
No, I was on the local radio station here and we talked about the book. And, I really didn't sell, I'm not here to sell books, although I'd like to, but I was really writing the book so that I could have something for my family. I've got a lot of brothers and sisters and relatives, nephews and nieces, 40 or 50 of them. And I wanted to keep the heritage of my father and their grandfather alive so that 100 years from now, that they would see what my father did, as millions of other immigrants to our wonderful country. We really have a great country, and it's based upon these wonderful people that made up our country. And God bless them. If come across here, we wouldn't be here.
I know, right? You make your dad proud, Stephen. Thank you. Sean Wilson has some family members who really don't understand him, but he gets to the heart of the matter and teaches them a valuable lesson in his children's book, Uncle Monster.
I was just kind of out of work, and it was something to do. I was wanting to write. My mom gave me the idea. The book is about two siblings exploring their house, and then they find a magic doorway to a cave underneath their house, and they meet a monster. It was mostly based on my niece and nephew, because I'm a very kind of antisocial person, and it was just me kind of thinking I was the monster in my room. My niece and nephew are Carl and Lizzie.
So you imagined yourself being the monster.
Yeah,
Do they think you're a monster?
kind of. It's kind of my nickname. Their nickname for me is Uncle Monster. It's not supposed to be hurtful. It's just the nickname.
And so what happens when they meet this monster?
Well, they learn he's not actually, this mean monster, and he's friendly.
Does he talk to them?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's he say to them?
Like at first he's wondering why these two children are in his cave, and then eventually they talk with each other and play around. This is on page 13. Lizzie walked up to one of the shelves and picked out a book that was falling apart and was titled How to Cook Humans. The monster was behind her and took the book from her hands. In that moment, Lizzie shrieked and turned around. "What are you doing with my possessions?" the monster asked. "Want to eat me and my brother?" Lizzie asked, terrified. "What? No, I can't stand the taste of humans," the monster said. The monster looked over at the cover of the book and started laughing. "Ha ha ha. The book's just dusty, see? The actual title is How to Cook for Humans," the monster said after brushing off all the dust from the book. And the brother is still a little confused about it all, but eventually he comes out of it. And the monster gets a little more friendly and takes a box off his shelf that's filled with magic chalk that whatever you draw with it comes to life or becomes reality. They drew all sorts of things, blocks and shapes and bugs, and they drew the monster itself, and they kind of have the drawing and the monster have a fight for a bit.
So at what point did the kids realize that this monster's okay?
Kind of after the brother gets friendly with them, and the monster just kind of explains what the situation is, and the brother calms down.
So at the end, are they friends?
Yeah, and in the book they name the monster to Uncle Monster.
And are they nicer to you now?
I guess they're kind of just the same to me as they always were.
It sounds like they don't understand you.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's a great book. It's a great lesson. Things aren't always what they appear, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sean, good job. Kim McGoldrick is an Army vet sitting in her Carson City, Nevada apartment, drawing and collecting action figures, trying to figure out what's next in her life. In the meantime, she wrote a book. It's called My Pet Mice.
Well, I first started off drawing when I was 4 years old. So as soon as I started, coming up with a lot of characters, I started writing. So about 12 years old, my first book ever of anything.
All right, and why mice?
Because I was sitting here all last year and I had mice and they were breeding, and I was like, you know what? I think it'd be really cool if, kids can learn about what mice look like when they're babies as they grow up, as well as adults, because a lot of adults think, ew, gross, baby mice. Yes, they may look kind of gross because they're naked, but within a week they start growing fur and they become more cuter. Pet mice. I bought them because they're easier to take care of in a small apartment, because I'm allergic to cats, I'm allergic to dogs. I didn't want to do birds with feathers and food everywhere, and mice, I found out later I was allergic to them too. So this is just something for everyone who collects mice as a hobby or as pets for educational purposes, because I wanted to use my artistic abilities and make a book, because I'm an artist, I can draw anything. There's a lot of different varieties of mice between colors and coats, long-haired, curly-haired, short-haired, and also naked mice or hairless. And then you choose whichever male and female, then you put them together and then they breed, and then you have baby mice. And every day, you handle them, they can become really good pets. But it's about baby mice as they grow up and what they look like every few days. And that's pretty much it. And then when they become 28 days or full 4 weeks, they rely on food that you give them and housing. So within they're 4 or 5 weeks old, they're already kind of adults and they can rely on food instead of mom. There is a lot of stuff in here that a lot of people actually don't know. How many babies that a mouse can have, up to 14 babies for that tiny little body of theirs.
How big are they?
They can get a little bigger than a golf ball, like the mom, but the babies they can be about maybe 10 centimeters, about a half inch, maybe a little less. They're just really awesome little pets. You can train them. If you handle them every day, they'll get used to your hand and your smell. They'll climb right up into your hands, and you can play with them. You could train them. It's really fun.
What'd you train them to do?
I trained them to climb up my arm to my shoulder, then jump on to a little counter thing I made, and then they go across the rope, and then down a tube, and then climb up a ladder, and then climb down another ladder.
They're really smart too then, right?
They're just as smart as like a dog or a cat if you want to train them. You just got to do it. You got to do it every day.
But you also draw them, and that's big too, right?
I did draw. I did color. I sat on it for about a month because I wanted to. I didn't know if I wanted to color it or make it into a coloring book, but I decided to color them first. So
Coloring books are huge, like with Alzheimer's patients and in old folks' homes. They love that.
yeah, I know. Well, I could still get this into a coloring book, but I'd sure like to see this book sold. It's under educational, and I think it's under children's. I'm just gonna keep on trying to promote my book as much as I possibly can, and go from there. And maybe in a few years I'll have another book out, but something else.
All right, Kim, sounds like a plan. While recovering from an injury, Sean Twine found out something he never knew. He can write poetry. He wrote a poem every day and soon realized he had a story. The evolution inside of deaths.
I was in the military. I got injured and I was down for a while, so I started writing these poems. I didn't even know how to write a poem, and it was just these words that was coming out. And every time I wrote one, the next day I would read it and I would back it up with another one. And before you know it, it all sounded like telling the story of a book put together, and it was all like in poetic form, and it just inspirational and spiritual.
What's the evolution inside of deaths mean?
It's allegorical. It's an allegorical title. Of course, allegorical is you got paradigms, you got paradox, you got so many different things that people don't tend to understand when they first read it. That's what those things mean. So the evolution side of deaths is meaning I believe in God wholeheartedly. So I say we all started in the mind of God, God's mind first. So it's not like we're alive. So it's like a pleasant death at first. And then God, when because he birthed us in his brain, in his conscious, then he placed us into our human form of our Father. So that's into the sack. And then that's another form of not being alive yet, not ready. So it's a pre-death, it's a pre-life form. And then you birth into the world, and then you have your final death. So those are like 3 stages of allegorical death that's the reason why I came up with the title. It's a book of philosophical enlightenment. It's inspirational. It tells a story of life. It takes you through life's journeys, life's paradigms, life's prejudice. It just takes you all through life up until your last death. So when you first start reading the book, you will start reading the stages of the first beginnings of life. Then you'll go into what a man should do in life, and how he should raise his son, how he should treat his wife. Inspirational and knowledgeable things to how to treat people good on this earth. So chapter 1 is called Transcend. And transcend means when a person is birthed on this earth, he starts transcending into his what he's going to be on this earth. And he picks all these tools up from his mother, his father, or whoever is around him, his sisters, his brothers, his friends, and he starts transcending into the person whom he's going to be. And that's your first start. And once you become of that transcended person, then you go through your child stages to your adult, your mid stages to your adult stages, and everything you capture throughout them stages, you use them to treat people in your life, your son, your wife, your brother. You know what I mean? And everything you gather, you're supposed to try to take the negative and take the balance of life and try to transform it into the good, because it's always going to be bad and good. I don't even call it bad and good. It's actually called the balance of life, because it's good and bad in this world. You want your good to outweigh your bad. So this book try to gives you examples of real life examples. It's just in poetic form, real life examples of how to minimize the bad and increase the good in life. As far as like giving a simple act of charity to a person, just saying hello, how you doing today? You don't have to be money or anything. Just those things that will increase your character to make you do good throughout your life, if that makes sense. The 75th annual book festival in Las Vegas. It was like a bunch of authors. We paid our little booth fee. They put up signs for us, and we had people come up to your booth if they was interested. I had banners and everything, and I did pretty good at the book festival. And then I had another book signing here in a local bookstore here in San Diego. So I've been working on that things. I've been exposing myself to Facebook and all this stuff. You know what I mean? To put a good exposure for the book, but it's doing all right.
Good to hear, Sean. Thank you. Jonathan Mole is a musician and writer with a powerful message for parents and children in his book, Blue Jay and the Pigeon.
So I didn't really have a healthy relationship with my parents, and I'm going to refer to him as my sperm donor. I don't refer to him as that 3-letter word dad because he's not in my life. He was abusive, and my mom left him, and I was on this court half custody agreement, and I would go from New York to Florida every year to visit him, and then every other holiday. So it was this like interesting situation at a really young age because Juan, that's his first name, was abusive and a drug dealer. And the book really is aimed for parents, for future parents, and then even children, like to bring truthful awareness to that, to where, oh yeah, you actually do have a bigger impact on your child than you think you do. I hope to bring more awareness and clarity into what parenthood is about and how parents should try to support their child emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I will never forget, it was based off of an actual avocado tree behind my indigenous family's backyard in South Florida where Juan is at. And there was this blue jay and this pigeon, and this pigeon was being chased from this blue jay literally, and I decided to write about it. And yeah, I wrote it when I was in high school, and it got published 2-3 years after. There's been a lot of edits and a lot of corrections. And it's about a blue jay, 2 different personalities. One's the escaping, and then one's chasing. And the reader can also interpret that in their own way. Like, oh, is that happening internally? Like, who am I doing that to? Who might I be? What situation might I be in that's happening? Like, who am I pushing away? It's more than the blue jay and the pit. It can be read as a child story. Like, the more mature audience could interpret that, like internalize that, and refer that to other personalities in their life. So it's this blue jay chasing this pigeon, and they end up, there's a lot of conflict. One's escaping and one's attacking, and then in the end, they're together.
So they find a way to overcome their differences.
Yes, to overcome it. Yes.
Good lesson for all of us, Jonathan. Thank you. All right, we are out of time. Thanks for being here on the Page Publishing Book Club. We put up a podcast every week at 710WOR.com. Find out more about our authors and their stories at pagepublishing.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.